Well, it's good to be back with you for another day of Bible study here at Christ Table. My name's Kevin. I have the privilege of serving as lead clergy here at Christ Table. If you'd like to know more about who we are, what we do, you can visit the URL that is right there, www.christstable.today. We are here primarily for those who are discouraged, disillusioned, or done with the church, but also many other people who have local church homes utilize us as a secondary discipleship opportunity. And we don't mind that. We appreciate that a lot. We're glad to have you on board. If you'd like to know more about this study in particular, you can visit the URL right there in front of me, go.christstable.today/divinecomedy. We are working through a study on the wit, the humor, the wisdom, the comedy from Jesus, the sarcasm, and there is a lot of it in the Gospels. If you'd like a study guide that goes along with this study for free, a PDF, you can visit that URL that's right there in front of me. If you would like a printed copy of that study, a book that goes along with it, you can get that by visiting the URL right there and just clicking on that button that says get the box. The box that we offer is a box that includes both that study curriculum as well as some other resources that go along with the study for you. And we would love to get that in your hands for this study. One other thing that I want to make sure that you're aware of, this book, Reconstruct Your Faith. If you are one of those people who are discouraged, disillusioned, done with the church, or know somebody who is, this is a phenomenal resource. It tells a bit of my journey as well as different paths in order to assess and reconstruct, let go of, rebuild, reclaim the parts that may be healthy and valuable to you, and leave the other things behind. Visit drkevinyoung.com in order to find out more information about that resource, and we would love to get that in your hands. Well, today we are diving into this story of Jesus about the midnight friend in Luke chapter 11, verses 5 through 8. I mentioned, this book. One of the things about this book is that it does have some stories from my journey in there. And one of my favorite stories that is in the book is a story about my grandparents, my grandmother in particular, and her table, and how food was always kind of woven into what we did as a family, especially anything that involved my grandparents, my grandmother, my grandparents' house. It was always just about food. There was food on the table. You couldn't visit her house without being fed, whether you wanted to be fed or not. It didn't matter whether it was a mealtime. Grandma would find some way to feed you because that was the way that she showed hospitality, the way that she was raised. And it was something that she was actually quite good at. Never used measuring cups. It was all like from scratch, and nothing was really ever measured out, but it was always amazing. And I thought I'd just kind of show you a picture of their house. They raised 7 children in this house, and you are seeing all of that house, and it is definitely as small as it looks. She actually still lives in that house in rural Indiana. Has been there 60, maybe 70 years. I'm not sure how long they've lived in the house, but it has been a very, very, very long time. And you could not come into that house without sitting at the table and eating. And it's small enough, you'll understand the statement that I'm about to make. The table in that house was the size of the kitchen. Like, there was very little space to sit around the table because the kitchen was so small and the table was the kitchen. Just so many good memories there. Whenever we come to today's text in Luke chapter 11, verses 5 through 8, we come to Jesus, who is telling a story or teaching about prayer. At least that's how Luke clues us in to what Jesus is trying to accomplish here. So let's just go ahead and read the text. Then, teaching them more about prayer, he used this story. Suppose you went to a friend's house at midnight, wanting to borrow 3 loaves of bread. And you say to him, a friend of mine has just arrived for a visit, and I have nothing for him to eat. And suppose he calls out from his bedroom, don't bother me, the door is locked for the night, and my family and I are all in bed. I can't help you. But I tell you this, though he won't do it for friendship's sake, if you keep knocking long enough, He will get up and he will get you whatever you need because of your persistence. This story would have, they all would have understood what was going on here. This would have been funny to them and also very awkward to them, because the culture there is much like my grandmother's house, where it is a hospitality driven culture. If somebody shows up on your doorstep, the expectation was that you would feed them, that you would make them comfortable, that you would take care of them, whether or not they were family, friend, salesperson, someone even just passing through town and needing a place to lodge. You would offer them hospitality. But this person has shown up. In fact, let's just put it back up here on the screen. Suppose you went to a friend's house at midnight wanting to borrow some loaves of bread because a friend has just arrived for a visit. You're not going to be feeding people at midnight. Like, even if people are showing up at midnight, which probably would not have been the case because you're dealing with animals traveling at midnight, you're dealing with bandits, very unsafe. There's not electricity, so there's nothing to light your way if you're traveling at midnight. So someone shows up to your house at midnight. It's not a good, they're probably on the run from something. They're probably trying to hide, but they show up at your house at midnight and you've got nothing to give them. And so, first of all, the fact to think that anybody would have expected food at midnight when they visit was ridiculous. They would have gone to bed, right? But then to think, well, I don't have any food in my house. I don't have any bread. So I'm going to go next door and wake up the neighbor in order to feed this bandit, this individual, this person who's wanted by the law, probably has a picture on the top 10 list from the FBI, in order to feed this person because I don't have any food, is like a snowball of errors that now begins to become funny. Well, you're going to do what's saying, go to bed. This person doesn't need to eat. Who is this? Stop bothering me. Everybody's tucked in. Everybody's in bed. I'm not going to get up and give you food to feed somebody who, first of all, shouldn't be out at this time of the night. And second of all, certainly doesn't need to be eating at this time of day or night either. There's no social requirement to feed or to take care of this person. But what does Jesus say? Don't just go away. I tell you this, he may not do it for friendship's sake. He might be your friend, but not a close enough friend to get out of bed in order to give the neighbor food to feed some rando in the middle of the night. But if you keep knocking, you're going to get whatever you want because he's going to get tired of you knocking. And people would have been like, where is Jesus going with this? This is actually kind of recalling that story at the very beginning of Jesus' ministry where the four friends bring the lame person to hear Jesus teaching, and Jesus is in a house, probably Jesus' house actually at that time in Capernaum, very beginning of the ministry. I mean, Jesus is now, what, in his late 20s or early 30s. Jesus had to live somewhere. He had money from the three wise men, so probably had a house. So this is the way it's written, probably Jesus' house, but they can't get in to the house. So what they do is they go up the steps to the roof from the outside. They take apart a portion of the roof and they lower the man down into Jesus in order to get to him. They don't give up. They literally take the roof off of Jesus' house in order to get this person in need to Jesus. And this is the same illustration that Jesus is making here. The illustration that Jesus is making here is one of, here, let's go ahead and do this slide. The illustration that Jesus is making here is one of persistence. In a time of need, whenever you are praying, be persistent. Don't give up. Take the roof off of heaven in order to get that need to God. Knock down the door, even if it's in the middle of the night, even if you don't feel like you're getting an answer. You will get an answer if you are just persistent. Jesus here kind of reframes prayer, not as something that is a polite request, but is an audacious, like not just desire, but is an audacious demand. Very interesting way to look at prayer, especially coming from Jesus, to be shamelessly persistent in those needs before God. And one of the things that we say, and I'll go ahead and throw this slide up, one of the things that we say is that concrete details are red flares, and the fact that it says that it happened at midnight was a very important time. In fact, if you'll go through the Psalms, if you'll go through the Hebrew text of the Old Testament, if you go through the New Testament, even Paul and Silas, praying at midnight in the jail. Midnight was seen as being this holy time, this transcendent moment, a moment whenever God's transcendence, whenever God's power is revealed, happen at midnight. And in fact, the rhythm of the prayer schedule had Jewish individuals and even the early church getting up at midnight in order to pray. This is why Paul and Silas were praying at midnight. It wasn't because they were just in the spirit or it was something that they decided to do. No, that was their regular rhythm of prayer, and they were just fulfilling it wherever they were, in jail or out of jail, on the road or in incarceration. But midnight was this special moment when God's transcendence is revealed. And so here, whenever the individual shows up at the friend's house at midnight, the implication is that this is either God or this is somebody who is sent to you on behalf of God. Whenever Jesus said that this person showed up at midnight, the audience would have immediately known that the story that Jesus is telling, this individual who showed up at midnight, isn't a bandit. This person who showed up at midnight is either God, which they had many stories in their history of that actually happening. Abram, the three individuals show up, the fourth person in the fire. So there are all of these moments where God shows up incognito. And midnight would have been the clue to them that this individual, there's something about this individual more than meets the eye. And so they would have been thinking and fighting on behalf of this person. But they would have thought, yeah, I can't do that. I can't be so persistent. I can't be so pushy as to go to a neighbor's house at midnight. And then when the neighbor yells at me, no, yeah, sorry, I can't push that hard. I can't push that far. But Jesus, through the humor of the awkwardness of that situation, reminds them, no, you're to advocate for others, to God especially. And whenever others have a need and you don't immediately get that need met, if people ignore you, if people sideline you, if people push you down or away or try to silence you, don't allow that to happen. Be persistent. Well, if you'd like, again, the study guide to this study, go ahead and go to that URL right there, go.christstable.today, Divine Comedy. It's been good to see you today. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow as we continue on this study. And until then,